chicken, pickles, and beer. Just about that time of year. Iced tea from a thermos. It's becoming increasingly clear that summertime, summertime, summertime is here. Tonight's the night. I mean all night. Oh yes, it's party time. Woo! 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, me no job. Oh yes, it's party time. Here we go. Tonight's the night. I mean all night. Oh yes, it's party time. 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, me no job. Oh yes, it's party time.
Welcome to the Roth Show. I'm wearing my headsets because we're going to EDC. An EDC, Electronic Dance Concert. Is that what it stands for?
I think it's the Electric Daisy Carnival, actually.
Okay, well, to me, it's Electronic Dance Concert, Daisy Festival thing, and in 182 languages, all you got to do is... Don't try that at home. You might hurt yourself. Tom, are you familiar with Woodstock?
I am, actually.
Okay, and they tried to put on a Woodstock this year. Is it going to happen?
It's not going to happen.
What do you know about it?
I just know that some bands started to pull out, and all of a sudden, they made an announcement that they're not going to do the show.
Well, Woodstock was part of my generation, okay? By the time we get to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. And I went to a lot of what were called love-ins at the time up at Elysian Field. And love-ins were a kind of a concert, but with shops, stalls selling things, handcrafts. Macrame was a big deal. The Hells Angels would work security. The LAPD would work the Hells Angels. And it was more a thing of sitting around Indian style with your shoes off and thinking in terms of civil rights, equal rights, trying to smoke some pot secretly in some corner of the field, and about the music. There'd always be a handful of bands. If there was a lot of difficulty, that would always bring people together. If it rained, everybody huddles together. And I maintain no mud, no Woodstock. There were a lot of concerts that were happening at that time. There were a lot of big concerts at speedways, motor speedways, but you didn't hear about it until there was the calamity that was Woodstock. No conflict. You need a whole lot of Shakespeare going on, and in order to achieve that, you need conflict. And the conflict was, it turned into a free show. People had a traffic jam that was miles and miles and miles long. I had relatives who went to that. And when it rained, it was August, and it just flooded everywhere, and nobody was prepared for rain, especially in 1969. There was no Gore-Tex. There was no Thinsulate. There was no Teflon. There was Teflon, but in terms of how did you get ready for the rain? Are you kidding? In 1969, you went like this. Food in Woodstock meant exactly what they just banned in New York City. No more nitrates, says the mayor. He eats the last hot dog. Well, that's all you're going to airlift in 1969. And airlift? Are you kidding? What kind of helicopters are we talking about there? The first aid tent really was first aid. You get the Johnson & Johnson box and you pop it open and you bring out a Band-Aid. I don't even want to think of the portisans. Maybe they didn't even have portisans at that point in time. These days, if you play at the Electronic Daisy Carnival and you're really, really, really tasteful and it's a small audience because your music is subtle, you play the portisans. In fact, I was just thinking, Tom, for a subdivision of our company here, Laugh to Win, and Laugh to Win is the name of my company. Laugh to Win's a perfect name. We got to sell portisans. We got to make portisans that are wired for sound, have a video screen, right? A little sensor around, so you kind of shake things free. There's a line outside, baby, like this. And it's a photo booth. You can do a selfie, depending on your diet, with the face. This is the vegetarian face, and this is the 4 hours after the Mexican tent, which is actually a good review. Orale! As a dedicated follower of all the bands that were at Woodstock, The Who, Sly and the Family Stone, Santana, Jimi Hendrix, it's a long, long list. And I love those bands. But you got to admit, without a video screen and without suitable sound and without some kind of visual that allows you to really see the act, it's hard to tell who's even playing the half the time. When you look at Woodstock, and I've seen the movie 55 times, you can't tell who's in the rhythm section. You might have Sly and the Family Stone because he's out front. He's got the biggest hat on, and he's the one singing lead. Carlos, he's playing the guitar, and they focus in on him. But if you pull that camera back just a little bit, it's surrounded by families and road crew and techs and hangers-on and press and media and other musicians, and you can't tell who's doing what. The music remains spectacular. Go back, listen to Woodstock on the disc set. In fact, there's a secondary disc set for Woodstock that a lot of us don't know about. And they have extended sets for Sly and the Family Stone and Janis Joplin, for example. I listen to it. That's get going music for me up in the shower every other morning. The extended Sly and the Family Stone set sounds to me like they played for 2 nights. I know some of the acts did, all right? The music is explosive, but unless you have a complete direct connection between that audience and what's going on visually, musically, etc. And back then, you really didn't. The sound systems were struggling. The lighting systems were struggling. It was raining. People were miserable and having a great time. At the same time, that's a lot of distraction, a lot of disruption, and a lot of misdirection, okay? So what happens? We find a way to entertain ourselves. What made Woodstock unique amongst all of the other concerts, and there were a lot of big, giant speedway concerts going on at that time, was that the audience became the show. We became the focus. When you go watch Woodstock, yes, Hendrix is spectacular. Sly and the Family Stone arguably stole the show. The Who were great. I've seen it 55 times. But what you remember is all of us naked in the mud pit. And what you remember is all of us doing something called yoga. And that's how you had to say it back then. And what you remember is everybody going, the biggest drum circle on earth, going, no rain, or whatever it was, and the traffic jam. The traffic jam now today is known as tailgating. It's been elevated. Why even go to the fucking gig? Half the band is boring. Come on, think of all your favorite bands. Half of them suck, right? Sorry, I'm old enough to say so. There's always one guy, maybe 2 in the band who you really enjoy watching, and everybody else is like, want to start a drum circle? And that's the chemistry that takes place, all right? Now, take away video, take away sufficient audio, and you have even more of an opportunity and a compelling reason to, come on, we're here, we're going to have a good time. How do we do that? At football now, the tailgating is a great big noisy affair, and at Van Halen, you get there 2 days early. Things like Super Bowl, you might get there a week early for the tent city and everything that is attendant to the tent city. Because now that you have a tent city, and I'm just thinking like a really good promoter, like the real good promoters at EDC, well, if you have a tent city, you got to feed them and you got to water them. And even the partisans have to have stereos and, get a selfie and all of this kind of thing. And you're going to need a beer garden for the gray beards and a wine garden for our women and you kids. Don't you come home any later than 4 o'clock this morning or you're going to be grounded. Yeah, right. But that's true. That is what's happening out there. Woodstock was huge. 500,000 people. 500,000 people, mostly who didn't pay, who were just looking for a good time and kind of stumbled onto it and created it as it was happening. Again, no mud, no Woodstock. You wouldn't remember it unless there was floods and Egyptians and Hebrews. Okay, there were no Hebrews at Woodstock. Actually, there were. I'm talking biblical. Something had to happen. And today, it dependably happens at something like EDC. Wait till you see EDC. It is a most orchestrated. It's like 6 Woodstocks at once, and they expect 500,000 people every single time they have it. That's one hell of a bar mitzvah party, and we're going, says us.